Hi, you're watching Reddit Confessions. If you think you've heard it all, think again. Because what started with a simple favor turned into the unraveling of my entire marriage. It all began when she left a note on the fridge that said, "Vacuum the upstairs, pick up my dry cleaning, and don't forget the almond milk, or no date night." I stood there barefoot, holding my coffee, reading it like it was a ransom letter from someone I used to love. And in blue ink, underlined twice, she'd added, "Do what I ask, then you get me." That was the third time she used that phrase that week. Like I was auditioning for my own marriage. A prize to be won if I followed enough commands. A man who had to prove himself worthy by being invisible. I didn't vacuum. I didn't pick up the dry cleaning. I bought whole milk on purpose. And when she came home and asked why, I just stared at her and said, "I don't need a slot machine, Ren." She blinked like I'd hit her with static. No yelling, no name-calling, just that look. The look people give you right before they erase you. For the next 3 days, she didn't say a word. She played music in the kitchen like I wasn't there. Watched her shows in our bedroom like it wasn't ours. Laughed on the phone with people I'd never met. Ate dinners I didn't know she ordered. Everything felt scripted, like she had rehearsed detaching from me months ago. Then came the silence breaker. She stood in the doorway Friday evening and casually said, "I'm staying at Callista's for the weekend. Girls' trip." Then a pause. "I think we both need some space." I wanted to ask who Callista was. She never had a friend by that name. But instead, I just nodded like a doormat who'd learned to flinch before the kick. But what she didn't expect was that I checked her location that night. Not because I didn't trust her, but because I already didn't. And there it was. She wasn't at Callista's. She was at the Blue Lantern, a boutique hotel we once joked was for affairs and politicians. And she had checked in for 2 nights. Now, I'm not the confrontational type. I don't throw things. I don't shout. But something inside me, something soft and exhausted, cracked. I drove there. I didn't even take a jacket. Just keys, a heartbeat, and the hope I was wrong. At 9:42 p.m. I watched her through the lobby glass. She wasn't alone. He was taller, well-dressed, wearing confidence like a tailored coat. They laughed. She touched his arm. He touched her lower back like he owned it. I didn't go in. I just stood there, like an idiot holding a ghost. When she came back Sunday night, she acted like she had brought back peace offerings. A scented candle. A bottle of white wine. A smile that didn't belong to me anymore. But she didn't know that I had watched her laugh. That I had stood outside like the punchline to a joke she never told me. And that's when the shift happened, not in her. In me. Because this wasn't the end of her little game. It was just the part where she upped the stakes. What she did next, in our house with someone I thought I could trust, shattered me in ways I'm still patching up. The thing about betrayal is, it doesn't announce itself with fire or thunder. It slips in like a draft through a crack in the window. You don't feel it until everything inside is cold. Ren didn't know I saw her. Or maybe she did. Maybe that was part of it. The thrill. The power. She came back from her so-called girls' trip, humming in the kitchen like someone who had just returned from a yoga retreat. Not from 2 nights of whatever the hell that was at the Blue Lantern. She placed the wine on the counter like it was some kind of peace offering. I didn't open it. I didn't say anything at all. Just nodded, smiled, and asked if she had fun. She said yes. I said nothing. But inside I was burning slow and silent. I spent the next few days studying her like she was a stranger I couldn't read anymore. The way she smiled at her phone, the new perfume that clung to her blouse, the sudden shift in her playlists. Gone were the acoustic folk tracks she used to love. Now it was synth pop and club remixes. It felt like she was prepping for a life that didn't include me. Then one night I found the receipt. It had been folded and forgotten in her coat pocket, the same coat she wore when she left that Friday. It wasn't from the hotel. It was from a late-night bar downtown. The name printed on the receipt didn't hit me until I looked twice. "Thanks, Des. Great seeing you again, Des." Short for Desmond. I only know one Desmond, and he used to sleep on my couch when his ex kicked him out. He was one of the only people who stood next to me at my father's funeral. He was the one who told me to marry up when I got engaged to Ren. "You hit the jackpot, man," he said. Yeah. The same Desmond who toasted our anniversary 3 years ago with a drunken speech about loyalty. That Desmond. I felt sick. I checked his Instagram. Private, of course. But his profile photo had changed. It was him, and I swear to you, I could see part of Ren's scarf barely visible on the edge of the frame. I didn't scream. I didn't storm out. I just wilted. That's the only way to describe it. Like a plant you forgot to water for weeks. I curled into myself and tried to think of any signs I missed. The weird energy between them. That time she laughed too loud at one of his jokes. The night I found his charger in our kitchen drawer, and she told me he must have left it during game night. I wanted to believe it was nothing. But then came the phone call. I was in my car, outside work, half-eaten sandwich in my lap. The screen lit up. Unknown. Normally I wouldn't answer, but I did. And it was him, Desmond. His voice was low, shaky. He said, "Hey man, I didn't mean for this to go that far. No, hi. No, how are you?" Just straight into the confession I never asked for. He said he was sorry. Said it started after Ren came to him for advice. Said they'd been talking for a while and that things just happened. That he didn't mean to hurt me. That he hoped someday I'd forgive him. I said nothing. Just sat there, staring at the dashboard like it would give me answers. When he finished, he asked if I was still there. I hung up. I couldn't breathe for the rest of the day. That night, I confronted her. I expected tears, screaming, denials, maybe even a fight. But Ren didn't even flinch. She looked at me the way someone looks at a pair of shoes they forgot they owned. "You weren't doing what I asked," she said, as if that explained anything. "I told you if you want me, earn me." She genuinely believed I had failed some kind of test. That's when I realized she didn't cheat because I wasn't enough. She cheated because she didn't care whether I was. And she still wasn't finished. Because just when I thought I had found the bottom, Ren showed me there was a basement under the basement. I wish I could say I packed my bags that night, that I slammed the door behind me, took my dignity with me, and never looked back. But I didn't. Instead, I stood in our bedroom, her perfume still hanging in the air, and listened as she walked away like we had just talked about the weather. The silence that followed was unbearable. She slept in the guest room. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling like the cracks would somehow spell out a reason. But there wasn't one. Not a reason that made sense. Not one that made it hurt less. The next morning, she made coffee like it was any other Tuesday. She left early for a meeting. No apology. No remorse. Just that same infuriating calm. I sat at the kitchen table, numb, watching the coffee swirl in my mug like it held some hidden message. And then, like an idiot with too much hope and not enough self-respect, I tried to talk to her again that evening. I asked if she wanted to fix this. Her eyes narrowed like I had just suggested something obscene. "Elliot," she said, "you're still trying to turn this into a love story. It's not. It's just expired. Expired." That word stuck to my ribs like poison. But that night, I discovered something that would replace pain with full-blown nausea. Our home security system, an old setup I had installed during a brief paranoid phase after a break-in 2 years ago, had a backup cloud feature I never really paid attention to. I only remembered it because the system sent a notification to my phone. Something about motion detected during our empty weekend. I logged in. It was 1:41 a.m. I sat there on the couch with the lights off, laptop open, heart already racing before the footage even loaded. The timestamp read Saturday night, the same night she was supposedly staying with her mysterious friend, Callista. The living room lights came on, and then there she was, Ren, in our house, wearing the same outfit I saw her in through the hotel window. She wasn't alone. Desmond followed close behind, laughing, casual, like this was just a second home to him. Couldn't breathe. They sat on our couch. The same couch where she once cried in my arms after her mother's surgery. The same couch where we used to eat popcorn and binge-watch awful crime documentaries. And right there, plain as daylight, she climbed into his lap, her lips on his neck, his hands on her waist. I paused it before I saw more. I couldn't handle it. She brought him into our home, into my space, not just once. The next few clips confirmed that. I sat there until morning, knees pulled to my chest like some pathetic version of who I used to be. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt hollow, like everything inside me had been swapped out and replaced with shame and humiliation. And still, I didn't confront her. I wish I could lie to you and say I stormed into her room, showed her the footage, and kicked her out. But I didn't. I closed the laptop, placed it gently on the floor, and stayed silent. Because somewhere in the back of my mind, I still hoped she'd realize what she was doing. I hoped she'd come to me in tears, saying it was a mistake, that she'd lost her way, that she still loved me. But she didn't. Instead, she handed me a manila envelope the next evening on a Wednesday like it was a bill or a takeout menu. "I've already spoken to a lawyer," she said. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Inside were divorce papers, cold, clinical, already signed. No apology, no explanation, just instructions. And the final blow? She had already changed her last name back. I didn't sign the divorce papers right away. I kept them tucked in the drawer of my nightstand beneath an old photo of us from our honeymoon. Ren in a wide-brimmed hat, her eyes squinting from the sun, one arm wrapped around me like I was something she wanted to hold on to. That photo became a cruel artifact. I'd glance at it every morning and wonder when the switch flipped. When did I stop being someone she smiled at and start being the man she cheated on? Unapologetically, shamelessly, and right there in our living room. She didn't move out immediately either. We were stuck in a strange limbo. She'd get home late, say nothing, and shut the door to the guest room. We lived like strangers renting a house together. The only communication left between us was the occasional reminder about bills or packages. No eye contact, no warmth, just cold, controlled indifference, the kind that doesn't come from anger but from detachment. It was during this stretch of silence that I got a phone call from the storage facility I manage. Yes, that's my job, managing locked-away pieces of other people's lives, and the irony wasn't lost on me. The call came from Carter, one of my part-timers. He told me someone had left a unit door partially ajar, and it was setting off alerts on the system. "It's Unit 149, he said. "Registered under your wife's name." My blood froze. Ren had never told me she was renting a unit. We'd never discussed it. And considering we shared every major financial account, the fact that she'd used her maiden name and a separate billing method sent sirens screaming through my brain. I drove over immediately. It was a short drive, but every red light felt like torture. The worst part? Some pathetic part of me still hoped the unit was filled with something sweet. Old journals, childhood keepsakes. Maybe she had been planning a surprise anniversary gift. Maybe there was still a version of her that had once loved me. I unlocked the door myself. It slid upward with that metallic clatter that echoes in your bones. And what I saw destroyed the last tiny piece of me I'd been trying to keep alive. It was like stepping into someone else's life. Designer clothes I'd never seen. Shoes with red bottoms I couldn't pronounce. Jewelry boxes from brands I couldn't afford even in dreams. Photos, framed photos of her and Desmond. Parks. In hotel rooms. One on a boat. Laughing. Kissing. Arms wrapped around each other like they were the only people in the world. But it was the wall that shattered me. She had tacked up printed versions of Instagram posts. Little Polaroids. Even selfies. They were arranged in a kind of timeline, labeled with dates written in pink marker. A twisted scrapbook of her affair. It wasn't some spontaneous mistake. It wasn't something she regretted or tried to forget. She had memorialized it. And in the far left corner, taped to the wall like a sick badge of honor, was a photo of our wedding, circled in black ink. And beneath it, where it all started going wrong. I don't remember sitting down, but I did. Right there, on the cold concrete, surrounded by the wreckage of the life I thought we had. The man I used to be, trusting, hopeful, faithful, quietly died in that storage unit, while the real me sat trembling in his khakis and cried like a child who realized his favorite toy never really worked. And I think that's what makes this all so much worse. It wasn't just that she stopped loving me. It was that she turned me into a footnote in her real story, the one she had started writing without me long before I ever noticed. When I got home that night, I didn't confront her. I didn't ask questions. I didn't demand answers. I just poured myself a glass of water, stared at the ceiling fan as it turned like the hands of a broken clock, and waited for morning. Because I knew something now. This wasn't just infidelity. This was war. And she wasn't even hiding her weapons anymore. I waited 2 days before I said anything. Not because I was trying to be strategic or strong or clever. No. I waited because I couldn't trust myself to speak without falling apart. I was still shaking from what I saw in the storage unit. I'd gone numb so deeply that even my own thoughts felt like background noise. I showered, I ate, I pretended to work. But it all felt mechanical. Like I was just performing the role of Elliot, the almost divorced guy. Meanwhile, Ren moved through the house like a tourist. Like she was only staying until checkout. She spent most nights out, and when she did come back, she'd sleep in the guest room with the door closed, her light glowing under the crack like a signal. Do not enter. You are no longer welcome here. And yet, I didn't kick her out. I don't know why. Maybe because part of me was still waiting for some kind of apology. Maybe because I hoped the woman I married was still buried beneath the layers of coldness and cruelty. Maybe because I didn't want to be alone. Or maybe, and this hurts the most, maybe because I thought I deserved this. But then came Thursday night. She came home early for once. No makeup, no smile. Just tired eyes and a purse that hit the kitchen counter like she wanted it to be heard. I was sitting on the couch, pretending to scroll through news I wasn't reading. I turned the TV off and said, "Can we talk?" She looked at me for the first time in what felt like weeks. Really looked. But there was no warmth in her expression. No regret. Just mild inconvenience, like I'd asked her to explain a bad Yelp review. Still, she nodded. Sat down across from me. Not beside me, across. Like we were strangers negotiating a rental agreement. I didn't yell. I didn't demand answers. I didn't even mention Desmond or the storage unit. I just asked one quiet question. When did you stop loving me? She took a breath. No hesitation. No tears. Just the kind of honesty that doesn't hurt because it's cruel. It hurts because it's true. I think it started, she said slowly, when I realized I was teaching you how to love me, and you weren't listening. That stunned me. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. She went on. You were kind, loyal, always there. But you were passive, predictable. You never challenged me. You never made me feel seen. I blinked. Seen. She sighed. You didn't notice when I changed my hair 3 times. You didn't ask why I cried after Thanksgiving dinner last year. You just existed next to me. And eventually I started existing somewhere else. I wanted to argue. I wanted to scream that I had noticed. But I was walking on eggshells. That I didn't ask because every time I did, she said she was fine. That she never wanted to be touched. Never opened up. Never made space for me to step in. But I didn't say any of that. I just whispered. So you replaced me? She tilted her head. No. I evolved. That was it. That was the final nail. Not the cheating. Not the hotel. Not even the wall of memories in her storage unit. It was that quiet, emotionless confession that she didn't see me as a human being anymore. She saw me as a phase, a stepping stone, an expired chapter in her self-improvement arc. She stood up. I'm moving out on Saturday. I didn't respond. She grabbed a glass of water, walked to the guest room, and shut the door behind her. Not a slam, just a soft, polite click, like a business transaction had been concluded. And I sat there, still, empty, smaller than I'd ever felt. The man who used to write her poems, who once stayed up all night building her bookshelf without instructions because she wanted to wake up to magic, who canceled a job interview to hold her hand during her biopsy results. That man was just a phase to her. That night I signed the divorce papers. I didn't leave them on the counter. I mailed them, I needed distance, not just physical but symbolic. And just when I thought it was over, really over, I got a text. From Desmond. You need to know something before she moves out. I didn't know what she was planning until yesterday. Check your attic. I stared at Desmond's message for so long the screen dimmed and locked. Check your attic. That's all it said. 6 words, and every one of them felt like it had teeth. I had 1,000 questions. Why was Desmond warning me now? What could possibly be up there? And most of all, how long had she been planning whatever this was? But instead of asking, instead of replying with fury or fear, I just stood up and walked toward the hallway like a sleepwalker pulled by instinct. The attic was more of a crawl space than anything. Low ceilings, uneven insulation, the usual forgotten boxes from when we first moved in together. Ren never liked going up there. She always said it was too dusty or too creepy. She made me do the Christmas lights, the storage swaps, the leaks, all of it. So if she had left something there, it had to be deliberate. I pulled down the wooden hatch ladder, and it creaked like it hadn't been touched in years, though I knew I'd been up there just months ago when the water heater shorted. I climbed slowly, flashlight in one hand, heart pounding louder than my footsteps. The air smelled stale. Dry insulation. Old paper. A faint whiff of perfume? That's when I saw the box. Not a moving box. Not dusty like the others. A matte black storage bin, perfectly centered on the attic floor. It didn't belong. I crouched and opened it slowly, not sure what I expected, but certainly not this. Inside were folders. Dozens. Neatly labeled in her handwriting. One read, Elliot's patterns, emotional withdrawals. Another, triggers that work. And another, voice recordings, gaslighting attempts. At first, I thought she had been journaling. Therapy, maybe? A way to process our marriage. But then I opened the first folder, and my blood turned to ice. She had been documenting me. Not journaling. Not venting. Documenting like I was a subject in a study. There were notes on what I said during arguments. Screenshots of my texts, even the passive, meaningless ones. Bullet points on tendencies, typical reactions, and emotional weak spots. One line read, when he gets quiet, guilt sets in. Push harder then pull back. Works every time. I felt dizzy, like I was watching myself drown in real time. She hadn't just fallen out of love. She had studied me like I was a broken machine she could control. There were photos, too, of me, sleeping, cooking, reading, even one of me in the shower, barely visible through the frosted glass. Taken from the crack in the door. That image made my skin crawl. And then I saw the final folder. No label, just a USB drive taped to the inside. I took it downstairs and plugged it into my laptop. My hands were trembling. There were audio files, voice memos. Most were hers. Whispered thoughts. One started with, note to self, if I ever need to push for divorce, start phase 3. He won't fight back. He never does. Another, Des says I'm going too far, but he doesn't understand how slow this man is to learn. I have to make him let me go. And the one that broke me completely, I could cheat in front of him, and he'd still ask if I needed anything from the store. That's when I realized, none of this had been messy. None of it impulsive. It had been a systematic dismantling of my trust, my will, my sense of self. I wasn't just left. I was slowly erased, replaced by a version of myself I didn't recognize anymore. A hollow, obedient echo of the man I used to be. I sat there until dawn, staring at the screen. And when the sun rose, I packed a bag. Not out of strength. Not out of revenge. But because I was finally afraid. Not of her, but of what staying any longer would do to me. I didn't slam the door when I left. I didn't even shut it fully. I just walked out. Slowly, like someone leaving a museum exhibit of their own life. I had one duffel bag, my laptop, and the heavy, sickening knowledge that my marriage hadn't crumbled in a storm. It had been disassembled screw by the woman who once said she'd never hurt me. I drove for hours. I don't even remember where I stopped that night. Some roadside motel with an ice machine older than my college degree, and a flickering lobby light that buzzed like it had something to say. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I just laid there with the USB still in my pocket, like it had weight, like it pulsed. Every few hours I'd replay those voice memos in my head, especially that one. He could catch me mid-act and still offer to drive me home. She was right. That's exactly the kind of man I had become. Predictable, spineless, loyal to the knife she used. But the next morning, I woke up to something that didn't make sense. A text from her. Just one line. I left you a letter. You'll know where. No punctuation. No emotion. Just cold certainty. And for some reason, I did know where. The bookshelf. The second shelf behind the old hardcover I never opened. A biography of some historical figure she bought at an airport and never finished. I had never thought about it until now, but the book always stuck out awkwardly. Too tall for the shelf. Too wide for the space. Misplaced. Purposefully. So I turned the car around. I didn't want to go back, but I needed to know what was in that letter. I unlocked the door. She was gone. Completely. Everything of hers was cleared out. No clothes. No shoes. No scent. It felt like a house that had never been lived in. Even the picture frames were gone. Not just her photos, all of them. As if erasing me required removing herself, too. I pulled out the book. The letter was tucked between the pages. Folded precisely, with no smudges, no creases out of place. My name written on the front in her handwriting. The same curves that once spelled, I love you, in birthday cards. I sat down on the floor and read, Elliot, I know you're hurting, and I know you think you understand what I did. But you don't. Not fully. You think this was about betrayal, about control, about Desmond. But this was about survival. When we met, you were quiet, safe, kind. You listened. You laughed at my bad jokes. You were dependable, something I'd never had before. And for a while, that was enough. But the version of me who needed safe died a long time ago. And instead of admitting that to you or to myself, I stayed. And I started to resent you for what you couldn't see. You didn't notice when I lost my job. When I skipped therapy. When I stopped calling my sister. You didn't see me unravel. You just kept making dinner and folding towels like it was all okay. So yes, I cheated. I lied. I manipulated. But not because I wanted to break you. Because I didn't know how to be honest about how broken I was becoming. Desmond didn't save me. He just reminded me I existed. That I could still feel something other than invisible. You deserved honesty. But I had none left to give. What you found in the attic. That wasn't about you. It was about me needing to prove something to myself. That I was still in control of something. Because everything else was slipping. I'm sorry. Not because I regret leaving. But because I made you feel like it was your fault. It wasn't. You were good. Too good for someone like me. And I hope someday you'll see that walking away wasn't weakness. It was the first thing you did for you. Please don't come looking. I won't be anywhere you expect. Ren. I read the letter 3 times. And not once did I cry. Not because it didn't hurt, but because it finally all fit. The coldness. The distance. The cruelty. It wasn't about punishing me. It was about disappearing into something else. Someone else. But the worst part? Even in her confession, she still made me feel small. Like I had missed something obvious. Like my kindness had been a mistake. I folded the letter, put it back in the book and left it there. Not because I wanted to revisit it, but because I needed proof that I hadn't imagined it all. I didn't burn the house down. I didn't destroy her things. I just sat there, in the silence of what used to be our living room, and said the one thing I never had the courage to say out loud before. You didn't break me. You just taught me how easily I could be bent. And just when I thought her story was over in my life, I received a call from a blocked number. A voice I didn't recognize, but a secret they knew. The call came at 11:13 p.m. The number was blocked. At that point, I had no one left who'd bother calling me late. Not family, not friends, not Ren. First, I let it ring. But something in me, maybe curiosity, maybe recklessness, answered. A man's voice. Calm. Careful. I don't know you, but I know her, he said. And I thought you should know. You weren't the only one she documented. His name was Leon. He had met Ren through a creative writing seminar. They'd had coffee once, then he said she grew cold, but not before oversharing strange things. About her experiments. About mapping people. About behavioral logs. She'd done it before. To others. Maybe not always in relationships. But this wasn't new for her. That revelation, oddly enough, brought me peace. It meant this wasn't something I caused. It wasn't because I lacked charm or drive or danger. It wasn't because I folded laundry and liked quiet nights. It was because she needed to control something, and I was the safest canvas. That's when I finally, truly, let her go. I started sleeping again. I got a new apartment. Small, quiet, but mine. I painted the walls navy blue and hung up prints I actually liked. I bought groceries without overthinking what someone else might want for dinner. I signed up for a free journaling app and started writing every morning. Not about her, but about me. About what I wanted. About what I never said out loud. About how damn tired I was of apologizing for being gentle. I reconnected with people. My brother, who I'd pushed away. My high school friend, Lena, who sent me memes at 2 a.m. Until I finally laughed again. And therapy. Yeah, I went. I told the whole story, minus the dramatics, and the therapist didn't flinch once. She just nodded and said, "Sounds like you were surviving, not living." That stuck with me. And now, it's been almost 6 months. I saw Ren once, from a distance. She didn't see me. She looked fine, maybe even happy. But for the first time, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel replaced. I didn't feel like a phase. I just felt free. I won't pretend I'm fully healed. That would be a lie. There are still nights I catch myself replaying her words, her smirk, her silence. But there are more mornings now where I wake up and think, I'm okay. I made it. So if you've ever been through something like this, if someone turned love into a test, made you feel like you were always behind, always wrong, always weak, just know this, you weren't the problem. You were just too kind for someone who confused power with love. Thanks for sticking with me through this story. Now it's your turn. What moment from this story shocked you the most? Or reminded you of something you've lived through yourself? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read everything. And don't forget to subscribe to Reddit Confessions for more real, raw stories like this one. You're not alone. You never were.